September 21st is the International Day of Peace, established by the United Nations in 1981. Peace Day is an opportunity for everyone to promote peace personally, politically, and communally. Then Peter came and said to him, "Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times?" Jesus said to him, "Not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times." Now, last week I've had a chance to walk around Smiths Falls a bit and chat, and I can be chatty, and sometimes I chat and sometimes I listen. And one of the things I like to do is talk about the service that's coming up, because it's a way to get feedback to see whether or not the idea for the Sunday will get any traction. And so I spoke to a woman I met this week about forgiveness, confession, absolution. And I asked her permission to repeat what she said. Now, she is a fully adult woman, and she's been an adult woman for some time. And she told me a story about when she was a 6-year-old girl. And it has been a while since she's been 6. And the story was simple. She told of preparing to go to confession because she was Roman Catholic, and she couldn't think of a sin to confess. So it occurred to her that recently she was trying to get a hold of her cat. And the cat ran away and hid under her bed. And she became impatient and frustrated and pulled the cat out from underneath her bed by the tail. And her cat yelped. And she felt horrible about that. So she confessed it as a sin. And her priest at the time thought that it was a light thing and said, that's a very small thing, and that it was a cute confession for a child. However, she didn't feel that way. And she didn't feel that way because she knew that the impulse that led her to pull on that cat's tail could be manifest at other times and in other ways. And she knew at 6 years old that when she's impatient and when she's frustrated, she has to be careful how she reacts. Now, she's a long way from 6 years old, but she remembers the time she pulled her cat's tail because she knows that this thing that was in her at 6 is a part of her that troubles her, and she wants to keep a grip on it. It was a very good confession. Then Peter came and said to him, "If a member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times?" Jesus said to him, "Not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times." A few years ago, I met a good friend of mine, a really good man. And a friend that you love, but you only see once or twice a year because of work, and you live in different parts of the world. And this really good man is a big man. He's got huge shoulders. He is at university. He played football, and you can tell. He carries himself with with great confidence. He's also a minister. He carries himself with great confidence, and he is the kind of handsome that big men can be. Not fine, but rugged. All man. Still plays football, but has a bad knee. Now, much in his life is easy, but not everything. He's a preacher, and he preaches well. He's good looking. He gets immediate credibility, and he's just a good, solid man. And he's a good man. And he has a son of whom he's very proud. And his son didn't play football. His son was a little bit smaller, but his son was really good at hockey. And when you talk to this man, a really good man, he'd tell you stories, hockey adventures about his son. But a couple of years ago, when I spoke with him, he told me that his son came to him with his bags packed, absolutely prepared to move, expecting to be kicked out of the house because he was gay. And my friend, when he told me that story, I said, well, you must have really bawled when he told you that. And he did, of course. And he really bawled because this good man, for whom things were relatively easy, would have spent, not all the time, because he's a good man, would have made comments from time to time about homosexuals, or would have from time to time made a joke, or would have from time to time expressed his opinion about homosexuality because he's a conservative kind of preacher. But now his son is looking at him, packed and ready to move because he's afraid of his father. Now his heart was broken. Now that was 2 years ago when I see him, he still gets misty when he thinks of that. And he's still trying to think of a way to let his son know that those years of comments came from a place of ease, a careless place, that he's not the man who would despise his son. And so clearly he asked his son's forgiveness, but he's asked his son forgiveness again and again, because he knows that ease within him that allows him to make hasty judgments or to make unthoughtful comments still resides in him. And he has to learn how to excise that and put it behind him. Not a small confession. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times. Every Sunday, we acknowledge the traditional territory. The Algonquin people agreed to share the land in which we reside, but did not surrender their title and rights to it. We acknowledge, therefore, that we continue to occupy unceded Algonquin territory. In 1986, the United Church of Canada apologized to First Nations peoples. In our zeal to tell you of the good news of Jesus Christ, we were closed to the value of your spirituality. We confused Western ways and culture with the depth and breadth and length and height of the gospel of Christ. We ask you to forgive us and to walk together with us in the Spirit of Christ, so that our peoples may be blessed and God's creation healed. In 1988, at the 32nd General Council, the Indigenous Church acknowledged the apology, expressing its hope that the Church would live into its words. And in 1998, the Church apologized again, this time specifically for its role in Indian residential schools. As moderator of the United Church of Canada, I wish to speak the words that many people have wanted to hear for a very long time. On behalf of the United Church of Canada, I apologize for the pain and suffering that our church's involvement in the Indian residential school system has caused. Since 2008, the United Church has been actively engaged in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. At the 41st General Council meeting in August of 2012, the United Church revised its crest to acknowledge the presence and spirituality of Aboriginal peoples in the Church at the time of the Union and now. Why do we keep apologizing? Why is it not the first act? Why is not the first act of confession a story of how we corrected a grievous wrong? We are a good church that knows how we can be blind to systemic problems because we live in that same system. The work of reconciliation requires that we learn to act differently than what seems to be normal or in accordance with common knowledge or common sense, and be led by a more humble and open spirit. We are a good church that does not want to manifest this darker potential in our treatment of others. Now, on Friday, I was speaking with Isaac Allen, and I asked him, what are we doing today that will lead a future generation to apologize? And his answer was immediate: the molestation of our environment. We are a good people. We are a good people with a darker potential. We are prone to making the same mistakes. Therefore, we confess more than once to the same transgression. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times. How about each of us? Are we each good people who sometimes unintentionally harms another? Do we make judgments that are not justified and learn we're wrong and feel awful about it? Do some of us have a quick wit and find our foot in our mouths on sensitive issues or in hurtful ways? Are some of us capable of being impulsive when we're impatient? Is our speech sometimes unnecessarily sharp? When you act outside of your higher character, does it unsettle you? Do you apologize? Do you ask for forgiveness, but the guilt does not go away? Consequently, do you keep bringing up the same transgression and asking for forgiveness again? We do this because we're good people and we want to be set free from that other darker nature. Sometimes we're the target of the transgression. The bad joke was about you. The sharp tongue was aimed at you. The impulsive act harmed you. You, therefore, are the one who's asked for forgiveness again and again, because the person who transgressed is a good person like you, and they don't want to manifest this darker potential in their treatment of you or anybody else ever again. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but, I tell you, 77 times. So forgiveness, or the need to be forgiven again and again, is not always linked to multiple transgressions. It may be linked to a character that we fear. Forgiveness, or the need to be forgiven again and again, is not always about you or your ability to forgive. It may reflect the conviction of the one who transgressed against you. We cannot say, therefore, no need to apologize, when in fact they do have a need to apologize. They do need to have the opportunity to excise that thing that led them to that impulsive act or those impulsive words. There is a need to hear the apology, and there's a need to hear an absolution. Sometimes, again and again. The angel of God, who was going before the Israelite army, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and took its place behind them. It came between the army of Egypt and the army of Israel. That which troubles us is like a pillar of cloud. It affects our judgments and our perspective. Confession and forgiveness moves the cloud from in front of us, where it blocks our view, where it obscures our vision moving forward, and places it rightly behind us. We are still aware of that which resides in us, but we are not preoccupied with shame or remorse or fear. We're able to proceed in developing right relationships. Peace requires that good people confess. Peace requires that good people excise that character in them that leads to impulsive, careless, or thoughtless acts that hurt another. Peace requires that we move beyond the pillar of cloud. Peace within sometimes requires multiple requests for forgiveness, even for one transgression. This because we cannot forgive ourselves when we know that some dark character still resides within. May God help us. May God help us live free and in peace with one another, a forgiven and forgiving people. Amen.